Hi, Assalamualaikum. I'm Muhammad Haris Daniel bin Ahmad Raji, a member of parliament. I will be explaining about the branch of government that is the legislature. The background of legislature. Legislation is laws enacted by parliament. These laws are subject to the federal constitutions. Laws are legislated by parliament at federal level and various state assemblies at state level. Delegated legislation is a legislation made by individual or bodies under powers given on them by acts of parliament. This legislation is trying to regulate very complex matters such as employment, social security, tax, liability, and economic management. Delegated legislation is important because parliament does have neither time nor the expertise to examine the regulation of every industry or aspect of the community. Delegated legislation confers powers to certain bodies, people, local authorities, and government ministers the right to make legislation. The role and function of legislature. Members regularly speak either in support of or in opposition to a piece of legislation. In parliament, members may also address constituent concerns during debates, ask questions of ministers during question time, and work to create or amend laws. They may also seek to have matters referred to a parliamentary committee for investigation. The main function of legislature is to make laws, amend or replace old laws. In Malaysia, laws are introduced in the form of a bill by a minister or a member of the legislature. Since in a parliamentary system, the party which has majority in the parliament forms the cabinet. Any bill from any minister gets approval from parliament. The function of legislature. Firstly, representation. The Dewan Rakyat is the lower house of the parliament of Malaysia. All bills must be passed by both the Dewan Rakyat and the Dewan Negara, the Senate, before they are given royal assent by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Members of the Dewan Rakyat are often referred to as members of parliament. Like the Dewan Negara, the Dewan Rakyat meets at the Malaysian Houses of Parliament. All the members of parliaments are representatives of the people through election. Secondly, financial. The legislature also performs certain financial functions. The fact of representatives democracy is the control and regulation of national finances by the legislature. The sources of income and heads of expenditure of the government are controlled and determined by the legislature. The principal financial function of a legislature is the presentation, consideration, and authorization of the budget. In every system, the budget needs the approval of the legislature. Thirdly, amend the constitution. The legislature is given the authority in making and amending the constitution because it is considered to be the legitimate representative institution of the people, and also the original constitution was drafted by the legislature. So it is appropriate that the legislature is authorized to play a vital role in the process of constitutional reform. The challenges faced by the legislature. It is a fundamental principle of democratic government that the laws that govern the nation must be enacted by an elected and representative legislature after due deliberation. In the two houses of parliament, the representatives of the people must be allowed to speak and debate fearlessly on any legislation under consideration. The more democratic a political system is, the more accommodative it is of participation by concerned citizens in the legislative process. In many political systems, the devices of referendum, initiative, and recall are provided for to give the people a direct power to ratify, initiate, or repeal legislation. Further, citizens are allowed to articulate their views at the committee stage of a bill in parliament. All the quality of deliberations in parliament are a mirror of the state of constitutionalism and democracy in a country. Lastly, the advantages and benefits to become the member of the legislature. The legislation and delegated legislation are subject to the federal constitutions, and these laws are not supreme. Both legislation and delegated legislation are made by Parliament and they have legislative effect. However, there are a lot of differences in both legislation and delegated legislation. For legislation, 2/3 of majority of the total number of members of the legislature is needed to modify the constitution. Meanwhile, the delegated legislation can be amended easily and can be modified easily, and it can be tailored to suit a particular situation. Parliament has insufficient time and technical knowledge to enact all kinds of law, while delegated legislation only fills in the gap left by the Parliament. Delegated legislation is more advantageous compared to legislation.
And Assalamualaikum, my name is Tan Sri Haziq Iqbal. I am Prime Minister of Malaysia. Today I will explain about executive in Malaysia. First and foremost, we go to the background information of executive system. Executive power of rests with a cabinet headed by our Malaysian Prime Minister. The Malaysian Constitution will stipulate that the Prime Minister must be a member of the Dewan Rakyat of Parliament who, in the opinion of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, has gained a majority of trust of the member of Parliament, while the Cabinet Minister must be from among the member of Parliament from both main house and it must be accountable to the Parliament. Lastly, the executive branch of government consists of the Prime Minister as Chief Executive, followed by various other areas of Cabinet Minister. Next, we go to the role and function as Prime Minister. As Prime Minister, I should be a spokesperson in international and domestic affairs. I have to be country respective for all the business that involving our country. Second, I have to coordinate all the nation policy so that all national policy is equal. Lastly, as Prime Minister, I have to advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong decision whether it is good or not. So now, we go to the challenge that being faced by a Prime Minister when doing their duties and responsibility. First, challenge to effectiveness are seen by many politicians and civil servants as endemic within the system. However, it's possible to identify factors that may help any minister become more effective. Many of those are interviewed. You can recognize that, for example, better preparation could have made a big difference to their performance. While they state the effectiveness is also hindered by the rapid turnover of ministers as a result of over-frequent reshuffles. Secondly, comparison often erroneous are made with the head of private sector organisation that the parallels are in reality only at the most rudimentary level: clarity of goal, the ability to inspire and communicate, and having basic managerial skill and the ability to delegate. Finally, the equality of minister is crucial. A central assumption of this report is the minister matter. The strength and weakness of their performance can have a big and often decisive impact on politicians and therefore on the standing of government. One of advantage that I have as a experience since becoming the Prime Minister is that I receive a respectable amount as my salary. The earning of this occupation is such a big amount that is proportional to the involvement and risk that is taken in this occupation. Next is being able to combine a legislative majority in a parliamentary system. The Prime Minister sees the national agenda, appoints the cabinet office, and governs at the behest of the part or a coalition of party. Lastly is the fame and respectability among other people. As the Prime Minister, I have the power to make such a person that important icon in the politics, and almost all the decisions are made of approved by the Prime Minister. Thank you, that's all.
Background of judiciary in Malaysia. The Supreme Court was established in agreement with the First Charter of Justice in 1807 by the British. Under the alternative duty of justice in 1826, a chartered judiciary was established for the Straits Settlement. The third duty, 1855, separate the court into two divisions. Penang and Malacca was one, with Singapore and the other. In 1868, the judiciary came separate authority from the executive when the Supreme Court of the Straits Settlement was established. In 1878, the inferior courts was established. The inferior court include the Adjudicator's Court and Coroner's Court. Johor was the first underrated Malay state to make vital for appeals to the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in 1921. In 1946, the court's ordinance was introduced and the title inferior court was changed to the lower court. A Supreme Court which unlimited civil and felonious governance, conforming of a High Court and Court of Appeal, was established under the 1848 Agreement. Opinion of the Court of Appeal could be further appealed to the Privy Council. The coming into actually of the Federal Constitution in the agreement with the independence of the Federation of Malaya in 1957. In 1963, the Federal Constitution maintained the appeal witted to the Privy Council. Still change can be seen in prayers from lower court. The role of function. First, protection or right. The judiciary has the supreme responsibility to guard the right of the people. A citizen has the right to seek the protection of judiciary in case his rights are violated or violated by the government or by the private organization or fellow citizen. In all similar case, it's become the responsibility of the judiciary to cover his right of the people. Second, guardian of the Constitution. The judiciary acts as the guardian of the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land and is the responsibility of the judiciary to interpret and cover it. For this purpose, the judiciary can conduct judicial review over any law for determining as to whether or not it's in the agreement with the letter and spirit of the Constitution. In case any law is plain ultra-virus, it's rejected by the judiciary and becomes invalid for future. This power of court is called the power of judicial review. Power to get its opinions and judgment executed. The judiciary has the power not only to deliver judgment and decide controversies, but also to get this executed. It can direct the superintendent to carry out its opinions. It can summon any person and directly know to the verify of him. The challenges. This study is about the challenges and prospect of access to justice that thriving at the moment in Malaysia. In the through, the Federal Constitution of Malaysia doesn't enumerate explicitly on the right to to justice. Judicial activity was employed to declare the access of justice embodied in Art 8 of the Federal Constitution. The aspiration of the judiciary is fed by members of the legal fraternity and the government when they combine trouble to issue that the grievances of the people are efficiently addressed, and illustration and examination on the trouble taken by the superintendent, the justice, and the judiciary for the purpose of broadening and easing access to justice in Malaysia is described in this session. The challenge faced by government branch in performing their duties and liabilities. The advantage of judiciary. First, just don't have to work on weekends or holiday. You don't have to work at the night time, and the decent work of life is balanced. Just may able to change sides. Easy to find a partner. You have many people who will assist you. Just also don't have to work outdoor. Other than that, decent job security as judge, so you can save enough money for retirement to avoid old age poverty.